A humorist once said, buy land. Why? Because they are not manufacturing this thing anymore, right? And this is especially true for land scale Singapore, right? Okay, although we did manufacture some on Sentosa Island, and the government is selling it for billions of dollars, right? And as some of my speakers have earlier said that, it's not uncommon for some of us here, in fact, most of us here, to hear story about our friends, our colleague, our neighbor that have made a fortune from property investment, right? So property investment is indeed very sexy, right? They call it a sexy investment, right? And once a friend told me this, it's very easy. You just need to save enough for your down payment, right? And you just rent it out, use your rent to pay off the mortgage for the next 20 to 30 years, and the house will be yours. There is no question need to be asked. Okay, it won't go wrong. Is that true? Thank you. Thank you for that very affirming answer. The answer is no. Investing in property is quite complex, actually, right? A lot of consideration. It's also known to some of us that we heard very sad story about people who get burned really badly in property investment, destroy their own life, breaking up their family, right? So complexity. Okay, gave me a job today. I have to thankful to that, right? So that I can come and talk to you about, question you should ask, okay, before investing in real estate. Now, joke aside, really, what I want to do today is to give you some good point, probably 2 or 3, okay? Most of us cannot remember too many, right? Good point, vital consideration, what we call handle for you to hold on, right? When you are evaluating investing in a property or get exposure to the real estate markets, right? So that just in case, right, if things don't pan out the way that you expect it to be, you won't land yourself into a financial disastrous situation. Is that okay? Right? Thank you very much. Now, let us begin with this chart, okay, which show you the Singapore Private Residential Property Index from 1960 to 2010 for 50 years, right? This is as far back as Singapore become an independent country. Now, can anybody tell me what does the chart show us? Can I have a show of hand? How many of you here are Cantonese? Cantonese. Wow. Okay, not that many. Cantonese should make very good property investor, right? You know why? Okay, if you have bought property on the year of 4, right, you have made very good return. What do I mean? 1974, right? If you bought property in 1974, if you bought property in 1984, if you have bought property in 2004, right? You have bought property in 1994, okay, you have made very good return. And 4 to the Cantonese means hey, right? Hey, that means you go up, right? So perhaps the next time for you to look at buying a property is 3 years from now, right? That is 2014, right? Of course, all of you know that I'm joking. We cannot, based on this coincidence, and say, invest in property, as I heard, overheard some of you say that it can also mean say, right? Okay, but just how some of the talks that we hear from the markets that people are trying their best, okay, to predict the property trend, right? And we know that it's not easy. Okay, why? Let us draw 3 important lessons from today, okay, by looking at the picture here, the chart here. Pictures tell 1,000 words, right? So what does the first lesson that we can draw from this chart? You can see it is a roller coaster ride, isn't it? It looks like a roller coaster, right? So investing in property, as my earlier speaker has already alluded to, is a risky business. And because most of us borrowed, right, we have to live it up in order to invest in property. that actually multiply your risk by many times, right? So remember this, property is not a safe haven. It's not a place for you to get sure returns. Okay, that's lesson number one. Now, lesson number two, right, is that Singapore is a very small and open economy, right? We are very susceptible to external shock. Now, what do I mean? Okay, you look at 1994. There's this little, up and down here, little cone shape. Property prices crashed in 1994. Why? Because there is this Middle East crisis, right? Middle East oil crisis, right? Now, in 1984, that's where property prices will come to almost very bottom. There was a huge correction in property prices because in the US, in the early 80s, we have what they call a W or a double dip recession, right? So that is in 84. Of course, we all know about what happened in 1997, right? 97 is a terrible year, right? Asia financial crisis. I had a friend who bought a property in 1996, right? 20% down payment, right? When the crisis came, the property was about $1 million, not any cheaper from your today's price, right? You know what happened? The bank that loaned the money, right, during the sunshine day, now take away the umbrella, right, when it was raining. He was asked to top up, okay, do a top up because the property prices went down as much as 40%, right? So his million property actually worth only about 600,000. And to make matter worse, the second twist to this is that interest rate was then almost 10 to 11%, right? So it is not that straightforward when you come to investing in property, right? As Professor Jeremy Cole have just said, that if you get the wrong side of the curve, you have to consider, it's not just money, right? But it's much more than that. Now, so coupled with the fact that Singapore government is also, they are very diligent and they actually come down quite hard in controlling the prices of property, right? And you don't know when they are going to act, right? So what does it mean at the end of the day is that we have a small open economy. It's very open, susceptible to external shock. At the same time, the government here can put in measures anytime. That means if you want to invest in property, be prepared for a lot of surprises, right? Surprises. That's lesson number two. Now, the third lesson, what can we draw? Okay, this is a positive one, right? The third lesson tells us that, now, although it go up and down, right? But it is generally on an uptrend. Every time when it crashes, you will recover and it will move higher than the previous high, right? Why? Okay, I guess one of the main reasons, this is only applicable to Singapore, not any other region, okay, is because we've done very well as a country in the last 50 years, isn't it? Right? We have done very well, which is why property prices here have been going up, right? So what does it mean? How do you invest then? How do you invest in Singapore property now? Now, the question is quite easily answered. You must have the power to stay invested. Right? You must have the power to stay invested. Now, how then can you stay invested? The universal rule of investment apply, right? What's the rule? Now, if you have been coming to this talk, you would know, right? Three things. Again, three things when you come to investment. First, your need to take risks. Okay, need to take risks is in direct relating with your needs of returns. If you need a higher returns, you need to take a higher risk, right? This is quite natural. There's no free lunch, okay? We got free breakfast today, but no free lunch, right? Okay, I don't think we had free dinner too, right? So, need to take risks. Okay, how do you know what kind of rate of return do you need, right? Now, that is what you have to do for your homework. You have to be diligent, right? The Chinese say you have to look after the money, right? You have to be interested in the money. Otherwise, the money is not interested in you, right? So what you need to do is this. You have to do your own financial plan, okay? You have to look at your long-term, short-term, medium-term financial goal and map it out with your current resources, your future resources, and you will know where you stand and what rate of return do you need to achieve for the particular goal, right? So need to take risk. Now, secondly, is ability to take risks. Ability got to do with things like your time horizon, right? Your stages of life. If you are gray hair, like what Jeremy Cole have said, then your appetite to take risks may not be as good, right? Now, things like even family situations. If you're single, your ability to take risks is better, right? If you're married, your ability to take risks is lesser. If you're married with children, your ability to take risks is even lesser. If you're married with 10 children, then you got no ability to take risks, right? So that is ability to take risks. Now, what about willingness? Okay, what about willingness? Okay, willingness is basically investor psyche, whether you can sleep with it or not. So what affect it will be your DNA, right? Your family background. Studies have shown that if you are the youngest, you're very willing to take risks. If you are the older, usually you prefer it, safe and sound, right? So willingness to take risks. Now, the thing about this part about willingness to take risks is that when we purchase investment products or instrument from financial institution, right? Can be 5,000, can be 10,000, can be 20,000 or 100,000. Usually we'll have to go through a risk questionnaire profiling, right? Is to make an assessment to say, okay, how much risk we can sleep with, right? It's a requirement. Ironically, is that when we buy a property that is so big, an amount, such a big ticket item, is such a requirement required? No, right? We are not required to do a risk assessment. So what must you do as an investor? I guess it's good practice and it's really good for you if you can do it yourself, right? If you're not very sure how to do it, don't worry, just look out for help, right? There were a lot of professionals which are willing and know how to do this for you, so that you can sleep at night after you commit to an investment. All right? Okay. Now, what we are going to do next is this. Okay, we are going to break down, right? We're going to break down investing in real estate into 3 categories, right? Why? Okay, reason is because these 3 things all give us exposure to property or real estate as an investment, but they are very different in nature. We have a totally different sets of consideration, hence a different set of question to us. Okay, then this category are namely your REITs, right? The second one is actually buying a home, and the third one is really buying a physical property for investment. Right, let's begin with our question that you should ask before investing in REITs. Now, from the perspective of needs, okay, you can ask yourself, obviously, is return, right? Okay, return. Returns of REITs, okay, does the returns of the REITs as an asset class itself matches your needs, right? REITs is a relatively risky asset class. Okay, the returns are not bad, meaning the risk could come with it. So does it match your needs? Do you need it, right? Okay, that's number 1 question that you should ask, right? Secondly is, as an asset class, does it complement your overall investment portfolio? Meaning, by adding REITs into your overall investment portfolio, does it improve your returns and cap the risk at a very acceptable level to you, right? So that's the important things that you need to ask as an asset class. And of course, dividend yields is one of the main reasons that we invest in REITs, right? So whether the dividend yield makes sound sense to you. In 2007, some of the REITs, are giving as low as 2-3% of dividends. During those times, you need to ask yourself whether these are dividend that you're looking for, whether, does it make sense for you to invest in REITs. Today, especially currently, REITs give as high as 6-7% yield, some may be even higher, right? So it's a consideration. I think a couple of weeks ago, there was a write-up on Sunday's Time, which talk about, it's a good time investing in it. Still, don't just invest based on the articles. You have to ask yourself, right, from the various perspectives coming from REITs, from needs right now. Valuations, these are things that my earlier colleague, Mr. Eli, have spoken quite in-depth into it. So if you can, grab hold of valuations reports from the house, get hold of the annual reports, the prospectus, right, and do your own due diligence properly, right? Now, other things like country, sectors, manager, and fund risk, these are what I call specific risk. Okay, it's not market risk, it's specific risk. Okay, these are things that you may have to decide whether, in your own investment portfolio that you need to be exposed to, right? Because risk is like that. If you are more concentrating in it, meaning if you just buy one REIT instead of 10, the outcome is potentially you may get better returns, right? But the negative is that you have to take on more higher risk, right? Specifically, if the fund are not managed well, if the sectors are not doing well, for example, right? So you have to ask yourself whether do you need to take on this kind of risk? If not, how do you limit yourself? For example, you can diversify it away. You can possibly look at REITs that are better capitalized, stronger balance sheet, and lower gearing. Okay, these are things that you can look at, and do your due diligence in the perspective of what do you need for your investment, right? Okay, now what about ability? Liquidity. If you have liquidity needs, you need to sell down your investment regularly, then your ability to take risks is definitely low, meaning it is unlikely that you should be investing in REITs, right? Because you may sell at the wrong time. Now, what about investment time horizon? If an investment time horizon is very short, you need the money in 1 year's time or 2 years' time. For example, for your children's education, you really need to consider carefully whether REITs is an investment for you, because it is a relatively risky asset class, and 1-2 year may not be enough for you to ride it out, for example, right? Now, physical and financial health is also important, right? If you have stronger heart, you can take the volatility better. If you're financially well, in terms of your debt servicing ratio, your liquids assets to your total net worth ratios, if you had your emergency fund, they're set up, then your financial health a lot better, then you can take the risk you're able to take the risk better, right? What about insurance? Okay, insurance you have to have sufficient, you have to have adequate insurance. That not only adequate, you have to have the correct type of insurance, right? To make sure that, should any unforeseen circumstances happen, the bill are paid for, right? It doesn't have to sell your investment at the wrong time. Quantum, right? It matters a lot, right? Whether you invest $5,000 or just 5% of your overall investment portfolio, right? Or you're investing everything, 100% into the REITs, right? So your quantum is huge. Your ability to take risks is high or low? Lower, okay? If your investment amount is huge, right, your ability to take risks is lower, right? If your investment are very low, right, then of course your ability to take risks is very high. For example, if you go buy Toto and 4D, right, you can bear the risk, right? You lose everything also, never mind, right? Because it's a small amount, right? Okay. Now, what about willingness? Okay. Really, for willingness, we would say whether you can sleep at night or not. Then that had a lot to do with what you call price volatility, right? In the investment world, we measured volatility using what they call standard deviation. And a REIT's asset class can easily be perhaps plus minus 15%, one standard deviation, or even higher, plus minus 20%, right? So that's the full three perspective you have to invest in REITs. Actually, I think, to me, investing in a good REITs is like, marrying a good wife. What do I mean by that? Very dependable. They give you very predictable cash flow. It's very good investment. They reward you very consistently, right? You get dividends very regularly. Okay, but it is highly volatile, right? So if you can just remember this analogy that I gave you, then hopefully, when you deciding whether to invest in REITs, whether it's suitable for you, then yeah, perhaps you can start with that, right? Now, the second part we're going to talk about is really question that you should ask before before buying a home, right? Now, why do I separate it from buying a physical property for investment? Right? Because it's have a totally different set of consideration when you buy a home, right? Okay, now from the perspective of needs, what's the first thing that you consider when you buy a home? It's very simple. Basic needs. Home is a shelter, right? Okay, home is a shelter. So it's a place that you want to live in, is your den. So what must be the first thing? The first thing is that you must like it, right? You must like it. And actually more important for the man is that your wife must like it, right? Your wife must like it, right? So that's number one. Now, also know that a home, a shelter is not your only financial needs, right? It's not your only financial needs. There are other needs that you need to fulfill. So one of the things when you buy a house is to remember, right? Do not commit most or all of your resources into buying a house, right? And live without any other resources for other objectives. Now I understand a common thing, and Professor Cole have also spoke about it earlier, is that many of us say, okay, it's all right, I buy a big house and stay in it, right? You will appreciate, by the time when I retire, I'll downgrade, and I downgrade to a smaller apartment and use whatever excess cash to fund my retirement. Now I would want to discourage you from using that as your retirement plan, right? Why? I think it's very simple. Downgrading is a very uncertain event, both financially and emotionally, right? What happened if property prices is not good, then it was in a doldrum? What about what Prof. Cole has also earlier said, everybody is downgrading, then you're going to sell to who, right? Yeah, so that's the question you need to ask. Also emotionally, moving out of the community, right? The relationship that you have built with the fishmonger, the vegetable sellers over the last 20, 30 years, it's very difficult. Honestly, I work with many retirees, okay? When they retire, fortunately or unfortunately, money is never their number one concern, right? So be very careful when you say you want to downgrade, right? Just be very cautious about this part. Now, what about location? Location is very important, right? You cannot be buying a house in Jurong and your children are studying in Tampines, right? You're going to kill them, right? What about space? Space is also very important, right? You cannot be living in a shoebox apartment if you have 2 children and 1 maid, right? They didn't even have enough space to breathe, right? So these are important consideration when you buy a home. Of course, I think it will be ideal if we can buy a home, we can afford it, and at the same time, it preserve value. That would be very nice, okay? But, these 3 needs come first, right? These 3 needs come first. Now, what about ability? Okay, affordability, right? Miss Vanessa have talked quite extensively about it. Affordability. It's just not about down payment, okay? It's also about acquisition costs, renovation costs. It's more than that. It's about your servicing of your mortgage, right? You don't want to take a 30-year mortgage where you still have to pay mortgage when you're 70 years old, when you want to retire at 55, right? So your tenure is very important, right? To make sure that you do not have any outstanding mortgage when you retire. So affordability. After you purchase it, make sure that your financial health are still good. Again, financial and physical health. Good financial health and physical health, better ability to take risks, right? Job stability is very important, right? If your job are not very stable, or if your income variable varies a lot, then you have to be very careful how much commitment you want to take, right, in buying a home. Credit worthiness. If your credit worthiness is bad, please, make it good, right? Otherwise, don't buy, right? Because you are very hard to get a loan. And sometimes your credit worthiness is bad without you knowing it, so better check it out, right? Better go and check it out. Right? It happens, okay? It happened to some of my clients. Now, financing risk, definitely, again, Miss Vanessa have talked quite extensively about it. If your loan to valuation ratio is low, your ability to take risk is high. If your loan tenure is short, your ability to take risk is high, right? Now, what about willingness? Again, debt servicing. You have to be willing, knowing that there's a commitment that you have, at least for the next 15, 20 years. You must know and be comfortable with paying that, right? Now, secondly, you know that a lot of your resources will be tied down, right? If you want to buy a very big house. So you have to decide how much resources you want to be tied down, right? Home is a consumption. Okay, of course, price volatility, right? If you buy a house and you are someone that, cannot sleep in it if the prices of your house, drop 20%, then you have to evaluate whether now is the time to buy, or there are other alternative, or renting would be better. Now, one thing that's quite good about investing in property, or what you call buying a home, that I think most Singaporeans that do very well is because, you see, how often do we value our house? Probably twice in a lifetime, right? The first time when you want to buy it, right? The second time when you want to sell it. Imagine the price of your house is like a stock that's listed on the exchange. I think a lot of us will have sell and buy a lot more time, right? So one thing good about house is that you don't value it that often. Although you get a feel, it's called relative valuation, how much your neighbor sell and things like that. Yeah. But one thing good is that, the price volatility is there, but, they don't value it on a daily basis. Yeah. So be sure to ask all these questions when you work when you're buying a house, right? Now, I saw quite a lot of gray hair participant here, right? So one thing I want to share with this group of people is that, I know you have bought your house, you probably bought it very cheap and it's good, make very good returns. Okay, but please, pass down your wisdom to your children, right? Because we are seeing a trend in Singapore that is a little bit worrying, right? As I spoke just now about the graph, the 50-year graph, there seems to be a disconnect now between property prices in Singapore and what's happening in the world right now, right? So you have to pass down your wisdom and if they are young, they tend to take a bit more risk, but you have to advise them, right, to ensure that they are buying something that they can afford. Remember, our children is always what? They are too big to fail. So at the end of the day, if they fail, who have to build them up? You have to build them up, right? That's the case. It is the case, right? Fortunately, for the baby boomer, if you are disciplined, usually done quite well. But again, that's your retirement money, right? So please, have this in mind. Okay, today, if the children is not here, go back, talk to them if they really want to buy a house. A house today, a private apartment, nothing less than $1 million. That's quite scary, yeah? Okay, so buying a home is an important consideration. It's a lifetime commitment. So do ask as many questions as possible. But just three category, just three perspectives you need to ask. Your needs, your ability, and your willingness. Okay, let us move on, to the next thing, which probably will be more applicable to all the participants here. That is about buying a piece of property, a physical property for investment. Interestingly, as I observe with my clients and also some of my friends, we started buying private residential property, right? Condominium, rented property, and things get really hot, and a lot of them make a lot of money, and it become very expensive. So what's next after that? People start buying commercial property now, right? And the return is also not too decent, because for commercial property you can buy it at a lower price, right? Okay, so perhaps the next thing to buy is car park lot, right? It could be a very good investment if they're selling it, right? So maybe, 100,000 for one car park lot in the CBD area. I think that will, attract a lot of fund flow there, right? Now, investing in a physical property needs is the same, okay? Very similar to your rates, asset class, okay? Returns, asset class, right? As the earlier speaker have all spoken about it. Property investment is risky, it gives you high return. Why do it give you high return, right? Because basically it's illiquid. You expect an additional return from an illiquid investment, right? So it is the one that is giving you high returns. It's very volatile, right? So as an asset class, whether does it complement your overall portfolio? Right? If 100% of your investment are in a real estate, then you really have to consider whether you want to do that, right? So these are the things to consider. Rental yield is important, but does it make sense to you? Some of us are getting negative rental yield after we deduct all the expenses. Does it make sense, right? Liquidity, if you need to sell, we can't bite-size a property, right? You cannot sell your kitchen today and your bathroom tomorrow, right? You can't, right? You have to sell it all at one go, and that means you take months or even years to sell, especially when the market are not that hot. So these are important questions that you need to ask, from your needs when you're investing in property. Ability, very similar. Affordability, ensure that after you purchase it, the financial ratios still look healthy. Gains, financial and physical health allow you to take better risks, give you the ability to take more risk. Job stability, credit worthiness. Okay, these are things that is important to you to ensure that you have a stronger ability to take risks. Financing risk, okay, be aware. Okay, so take a lower loan, which I think the government have put it in for you, right? 60%, nothing more than that. That's good. You know, a lower what you call loan to valuations is always good. It allow you to have a better ability to take risks. Tenure, don't take too long, right? Otherwise your son have to carry on servicing your loan, right? Liquidity, right? If you need your money in a very near term, or you need to sell it down on a regular basis, again, yeah, it's question your ability to invest in real estate. Investment horizon, again, it's a long term. You can see from the past 50-year history, you know, people who bought their property at the peak in 1996, right? They have never seen daylight until now, right? Today, yeah, probably they will break even. Not bad lah, they get to stay in it for free, right? Okay, so investment time horizon is important. Insurances, we talk about it, it's important, you know. You don't want to be a case where you have to sell your house, you want to pay for your medical costs, right? So that's very important. Okay, willingness, again, you know, we are talking about a commitment that you need to have, servicing it, you know, always at the back of your mind. You must be willing to live with that, willing to sleep with that. Tax, mindful, right? Income, rental income to accrue to your personal tax. Right? It could potentially means you will be taxed at the higher brackets, right? And better pay tax, okay? The price volatility again, right? This is something that you need to live with, right? Because when your property go down, when your property go down 20%, it doesn't mean that you lose 20% of your investment. In some cases, it's 50%. In some cases, if you bought it earlier with a higher financing, it means everything is gone, right? We lose every single cent that we're in, and we risk being caught by the bank to top up, right? So these are things that you really need to ask yourself, whether are you willing to subject yourself to that kind of fluctuation, even if you need it, even if you have the ability to do it, right? Very good, very good. Now let us go to some key financial ratio, right? I want this talk to make a little bit more practical, so that you learn something other than just listening to the fact, right? So key financial ratio when to consider when you buy a property or you make an investment. Okay, there are more than this, but these are the 5 key ones. Let me just go down with you. Okay, basic liquidity ratio. Okay, these are cash or near cash over a monthly commitment. What does it mean? Cash and near cash. Very simple. If you just dig out all your saving account and your deposit account, you have 30 of them, just add them all together, right? And see how much cash you have, divide by the monthly commitments, and that should give you, you know, at least 6 months. Okay, if you're less than 6 months, then you may want to do something about it. If you have more than 6 months, good, you have passed, but also not too good. That means you have not been diligent in putting your monies to work harder for you, right? So that's something that you need to look into also, but not in today's topic. Now, what about liquid assets to net worth ratio? These are liquid assets over your total net worth, right? Now, can I ask a question? Is REITs liquid assets? Is REITs liquid assets? Yes. Okay, especially those that are having a bigger capitalization, right? They issue more units and more people are buying and selling. They're more liquids, right? Is property liquid assets? It have to be no, huh? You have to be no, right? Property is not a liquid asset. Even if you can sell it very quickly, it take very long for your money to come back, right? Not like REITs. Within 2 weeks, I think you can get the money back, right? So what are the liquid assets? Your cash, your stock investment, you know. Illiquid will be your house, your CPF, for example. If you have not reached 55, these are all illiquid assets, right? Make sure that it is more than 15%, and especially if you are growing older, nearing your retirements or already retired, this should be even much higher, right? Now, debt to assets ratio, very simply, you know, how much you owe versus how much you own. At least not more than 50%, right? Cannot be more than 50%. Debt servicing, your total loan repayment versus your annual income, okay, it should be less than 35%. So what's your total annual loan repayment? Of course, your mortgage, your car loan, your Harvey Norman Best Dengue loan, right? Or even your income taxes, if you're paying by installment. These are your loan repayment commitment. Right? Ensure that it is not more than 35% of your total income. Now, saving ratio is good, after you commit all this, you should save about 15%. Okay, this is exclude your mortgage repayment, even if you're buying an investment property, just to be more prudent, right? Okay, so this should be the key ratio that you'll be looking at, and these are the passing grade that you have to look at. Okay, like I said, next we go to a practice case. I believe all of you in your folder, you will have this sheet with you. Right? You should have two sheets, a data sheet and also a worksheet, right? Okay, the scenario is this: husband and wife, right? Husband 45 years old, wife is a year younger. They have two boys, age 12 and 10, right? They intend to retire at the age of 60. Very typical Singaporean, right? Now they are the mass affluents. Okay, this is how much they made a year. Both of them working, combined total income of 140,000. Expenses, overhead, family, personal, loan repayment, total expenses, this is about 108, right? So they have a surplus of 32,000 a year, about $3,000 a month to save. So if this is their cash flow statement, right? Look at the data sheet. Now in terms of assets liability, they have about 300,000 in cash, 100,000 in investment, CPF, 150,000 in OA, the rest are in SA and MA. Personal assets have a car, residential property, this is a HDB, I'm assuming, 740,000. Okay, probably somewhere in Toa Payoh or Marine Parade, 5-room. Okay, so their total assets is about 1.6 million. Mortgage outstanding about 340,000, car loan 60. So their net worth is 1.2 mil, right? So what is their? We just look at three key ratios, just three important key ratios. Okay, your basic liquidity, it's about 36 months. Okay, more than past, need to do something about it. Your debt to asset ratios is easily calculated, 25%, no problem, very good. The debt servicing ratio, not a problem, about 28%, 27.9, right? Now, what happens is this, okay, property market is very hot and they're thinking about investing, and they have been, asked to visit property launches, right? And they want to, looking at evaluating, purchasing an investment property of 1 million, right? Now we know that down payment is 40%, right? So assuming they can use all their OA, okay, so 400,000 plus acquisition costs, stamp duty, right? 30,000 minus 5,004, that would be a stamp duty. Okay, legal and probate fee, legal fee, and a bit of what you call a renovation touch-up and things like that. Okay, let's assume that's 50,000, right? They take a loan, they want to take a loan of 600,000, 15 years, monthly repayment is about $4,000. It's probably about 2-3%. Okay, so how will their new situation look like, right? Assuming that the property that they purchase is able to give them a net rental of 24,000, right? 24,000, that's 2.4, meaning 2.4%, meaning deducting the maintenance, if there's any additional tax they need to pay, these are the net return to them. Not bad, right? 2.4% net. That is a fair assumption, right? Now what about their Expenses will increase by 48,000 because their loan repayment is 4,000 a month, right? So that increases to 156. So end up they could still work out with a surplus of 8,000. Okay, not bad, sustainable, should be able to afford, right? Okay, let's go a bit lower. Okay, what about the new position of their assets, liability, and net worth? Okay, they have to empty their bank, right? 300,000, right? Left 24,000. Okay, they empty their OA, that make up 450,000. Just nice for the initial cost, right? The rest remain. Of course, now they have a new assets worth $1 million, but a new loan of another 600,000, right? So that should give them a mortgage of, or rather a total liability of 1 million, right? Their net worth go down because some of the expenses have to be incurred, acquiring the property. So what will be their basic liquidity ratio now? Do they have enough rainy day fund? Okay, if you were to work it out, the only left is 24,000 cash, right? And their commitment is 156,000 a year, so that's about 13,000 a month, right? So that worked out to be only 1.8 month. Right? Everybody get it? Yes? Quite straightforward, right? So first ratio fail, right? Second ratio, debt to assets, okay, 1 million. Okay, assets is about 2.1, so about 46. Barely pass, huh? Barely pass, right? And finally, your debt servicing ratio, wow, way beyond. So in this case, should the couple invest in that property? Should the couple invest in the property? No, huh? Okay, very good. Okay, I see that my time is overrun. I'll try and finish it off sooner. Okay, just final question to ask. Okay, is that after you've evaluated, you can afford it, everything looks nice, don't sign. Okay, whether you're buying a property, whether you are buying a home, or you are being invited to invest in some overseas scheme, overseas property, okay, give yourself a cooling period. Okay, these are important because it's really for you to sit down, evaluate your circumstances, need, willingness, ability again, all over again, right? And also give you some due diligence. For example, if you are buying a home and or investment property, what can you do? Actually, you can go to the URA website. It's very useful. There's a lot of information there, right? You can look at it. There's a master plan 2008. Basically, you can know what will happen to the areas that you want to buy, right? You don't want to buy a house and 2 years later you realize that they built a highway behind your door, right? That's just terrible, right? You want to know where's the future MRT station and things like that. So do your homework. Don't be lazy, right? Don't just take what the property agent tell you, right? Do your homework. There are past transaction caveats being lodged and look at them. Okay, whether are you being sold at an unreasonable price? Oh, these are very important. Look at the trend. Look at the trend. Are you willing or not? The property was selling for, let's say, 700,000 a year ago. Now people are all selling at $1 million. Were you willing to buy or not? Tell yourself, ask yourself, right? So it's a very good place to be in. For some of the external scheme, then you have to be very careful, right? Check out the institution which is trying to promote this to you. Okay, check the MS website. Okay, there's a financial institution directory. Whether if they are regulated by MS, the license and what are the activities that are they're allowed to carry out. But if they are not, then maybe you should look at this website MS called the Investor Alert website to know that whether this institution is questionable or not. Right? So be very careful. Again, like what Prof. Ko has said, if you don't understand, what should you do? Don't buy, don't invest, right? Simple and straightforward. Now, one final words from me. One final words, really, especially for the grey hair population to take back to your children, right? Remember this. Okay, don't buy things that you don't need with money that you don't have to impress people that you don't know, right? Remember, yeah. Thank you very much.